Syria. We go live now to Patrick Henningsen, executive editor at 21stCenturyWire.com. Now, how extensive could this operation become? Obviously, this is still early days, but we've already heard accounts of airstrikes.
Potentially very dangerous in terms of the stability in the region, in Syria, in this part of Syria. If Turkey goes all in aggressively in this fashion, it's very unpredictable what might happen as a result. So there are many different players vying for positions in northeastern Syria. And of course, this is sovereign Syrian territory. So of course, Damascus eventually has vowed that it will take every inch of its territory back. But that's beside the point at the moment. The real problem now is how this is going to play out in the short to medium term. And unfortunately, because of the situation that the United States and its allies have created in northeastern Syria, there is no win-win in the short term. There is potential win-win in the long term, but that's going to require all parties getting together, all major parties, namely Syria, Russia, Turkey, and also you can extend that to Iran as well, Iraq, and also maybe the U.S., if they're willing to go that far as to cooperate with the local partners, the regional players there, which they haven't actually been doing for the last few years that they've been occupying northeastern Syria with their Kurdish SDF proxies.
How do you think the Syrian government is going to perceive this operation? As an invasion, as something else? And would they be right in that?
Yeah, technically it is an invasion. Of course, Syria can look at it that way, but that's not going to help figure out what to do in the short term. Clearly, Turkey has an agenda which it's trying to fulfill. It's trying to move out the Kurdish militant factions in the region, along its border regions. It wants to change the demographics if possible. It's looking at this as in terms of its long-term security interest as well. But the problem is it's creating other problems. And the longer Turkey remains occupying some of these areas, we're talking about northeastern Syria, Jarabulus, right along the border, all the way to Afrin and Idlib. The longer this happens, the harder it's going to be, the longer it's going to take for Syria, for Damascus and its Russian partners to flush out the remaining al-Qaeda affiliates and jihadists, which have already sort of reemerged in Hasaka in the immediate aftermath of the U.S. pulling out. So it's difficult in the short term.
Of course, it is important to step back and look at the bigger picture here. Could this Turkish operation destabilize northern Syria even further and even neighboring Iraq, possibly?
It's possible. It's possible. If you look at the other areas where the Syrian army and its allies, Hezbollah, Iranian special forces, Russia, with its air force, they've been able to eliminate or to flush out extremists in a very short period of time and liberate areas very methodically but very efficiently. If they are able to do this in northeastern Syria, you probably would see the ISIS factions and some of the remaining jihadist factions are going to be pushed out. Where are they going to go? Where can they go? Well, one of the destinations is northern Syria and over the Turkish border. Unfortunately, Turkey has played a role in facilitating the FSA, the Free Syrian Army remnants, and other al-Qaeda affiliate type extremists have been doing this really since 2011 and given them a home over the border. So this has exacerbated a lot of problems. The United States is also partly responsible for this as well, because it's allowed ISIS to fester in some of these so-called refugee camps along the Iraqi and Syrian border and around Al-Tanf. In these areas, the U.S. has been, you could say, managing the problem rather than completely eliminating the problem. If you look over the border in Iraq, Iraq very efficiently eliminated the ISIS problem, culminating in the liberation of Mosul and some of these areas in the fall and winter of 2017. So this could easily be done if parties were able to cooperate, but the problem is you have people with different agendas right now all in the same area. It's a game of musical chairs. The United States is the first party that had to leave that game, but now we have another whole host of parties that are basically have their own agendas. This is the main problem in the region right now. They're not getting together to look at a common threat. Everybody is trying to, in the short term, leverage their own interests. and it's going to potentially create problems.
Exactly. We're definitely seeing a shuffle right now in that area, and the Kurds have been more or less left in the lurch once the U.S. stopped backing them. Do they have anyone else to turn to right now?
Well, the most practical solution for the Kurdish forces, I won't say the Kurds, because in the West they generalize this term, the Kurds. There is no monolithic Kurds, but this is the popular way of portraying this in Western media. The Kurdish militant factions, these so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF forces, that's just a cosmetic identity. These are YPG, PKK militants, Marxist militants, and so they need to basically talk to Damascus. This was going to happen before ISIS emerged in northeastern Syria and took over large portions of territory. This was happening in 2013, but things got delayed, and then the game completely changed after the emergence of ISIS. So the problem is the United States, their biggest fear, the neocons, the warhawks in Washington, their biggest fear is that the Kurdish factions will turn towards Moscow and Damascus. And then there is no more divide and rule game going on in northeastern Syria, and that would also force Turkey's hand as well. Turkey would have to respect or come to a negotiation table to find a settlement for this problem that it perceives it has along its border region. So the United States is very much interested in that not happening, because then things would get resolved very quickly indeed. This is a problem that really Turkey and the United States are most responsible for the current situation right now. The United States is pulling out for whatever reason, possibly to pull out and come back in like the knight on the white horse later if there's more problems or if there's international pressure for them to do something. I'm not sure. Or this is a Vietnam moment, a Saigon moment, where they've literally pulled out and left some chaos in their wake, and it may or may not get resolved. Eventually it should get resolved, but it could be very bloody and violent in the meantime.
Do you see this as a betrayal of the Kurdish forces by the White House, as both U.S. Democrats and Republicans have characterized it?
The American politicians like to portray this relationship with our allies, the Kurds. They're our good, loyal allies. The reality is they're not allies. It's a marriage of convenience, and more often than not, the United States has used Kurdish people, Kurdish factions, militant factions, whether it's in Iraqi Kurdistan or in this case in Syria, where, by the way, the Kurdish population is not the majority throughout northeastern Syria, far from it. But this is how it's being portrayed. These are our allies, and we must be loyal to them and so forth. So most Americans, if you poll them, they think that the Kurds have some right to an independent state or territory in northeastern Syria. And this, of course, is the culmination of years and years of propaganda. And Iraq has a similar problem. They have an autonomous state.
We were just speaking with Patrick Henningsen, executive editor at 21stCenturyWire.com. We do seem to have lost a connection with him, but we'll come back to that story later on in the program.